So we continue forward, and after the wedding, Devi or goddess Lalita sets out to war to defeat Bhandasura. And she uses the seven oceans to make a huge drum to announce the start of the war, and many drums sounded throughout the universe to announce for the preparation of the war. Out of Devi Lalita's gold emerged the goddess Sampatkari, and she was red like the midday sun and had an army of elephants ready to serve her. She was terrifying yet beautiful, having this look of being ready for battle. And her mount was an elephant named Kana Kolahala, which was the size of a mountain. And out of the noose of goddess Lalita Tripura Sundari rose the goddess Atitvarita Vikranti with an army of speedy horses, and she had an auspicious horse named Aparajita, which was dressed in effulgence and auspicious bells, who made loud sounds and galloped, causing the earth to be its instrument in defiance against the demons. And so the war drums are basically resounding throughout the universe, basically announcing that Lalita Tripura Sundari is ready for war, and dum 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 everywhere throughout the universe. And the war drums are being sounded by none other than the lady in command, the commander of Lalita's army, Sri Dandanatha, also known as Varahi Devi, the boar-headed fierce goddess, also believed to be the Shakti or the consort of Vishnu's avatar Varaha. When she sounded the war drums deafened the entire universe, and so the Shaktis, the army of goddesses, rose at the sound of the war drums, ready and being prepared for battle. And some Shaktis made the drums louder by hitting them with canes. Some Shaktis were watching over the army. Some Shaktis were holding their swords and shields in place. Others were holding flags and waving them. And some of them were even holding the white umbrella of the lady in command, Sri Dandanatha, also known as Varahi Devi. Varahi, the boar-headed fierce goddess, headed into the battlefield first with her Shakti army, with thousands of umbrellas and Shaktis, including the dreadful Bhaidavas, with divine tridents as if shining lightning. And for those of you that do not know, Bhaidava is the fiercest form of Rudra, also known as Lord Shiva. His form is beautiful yet terrifying, and he is known to be the consort of goddess Bhairavi, a beautiful yet terrifying mother. So anyway, after Varahi gets off of her divine chariot, she mounts a lion and she marches into battle. Right? And so in her divine and fierce and fiery fury, she slays the entire army of asuras or demons that the three worlds shake and tremble in her fiery anger. And the devas, the celestial gods, are now fearful that Varahi, in her anger, will destroy the universe. So to calm her down, they chant her 12 names to glorify her. Some say you need a guru's blessing or initiation to chant the sacred names of goddess Varahi, but for the sake of this story, I will mention them. So as Hayagriva is reciting this part, right, Sage Agastya asks Hayagriva what the divine names are, and he reveals that they are Panchami, Dandanatha, Sanketa, Samayeshwari, Samaya Sanketa, Varahi, Potrini, Vartali, Mahasena, Agnya, Chakreshwari, and Arigni. And it is said that if anybody chants these 12 names, they will never meet with misery in difficult situations. Anyway, so continuing on, Varahi is marching forward in the battlefield, and she is blessing the devas after they calm her down by praising her and using these 12 names. Suddenly, the trumpet sounded, and goddess Matangi, also known as Shyamala, marches onto the battlefield. So goddess Shyamala or Matangi is described as having a dark complexion like the cloud, seated in a great chariot fitted with lofty flagstaffs. Her armor had the color of the rising sun. Pride made her eyes roving. Small drops of sweat had made her lotus-like face charming. Her eyebrows appeared to dance gracefully as she repeatedly glanced at the entire army of Shaktis who were excessively elated. A triangular umbrella made of peacock feathers rose high above her, proclaiming her importance. It is also said, I didn't find it in this translated text of the story, but it is also believed that goddess Shyamala or goddess Matangi emerged from the sugarcane bone of Lalita Tripura Sundari. Devas glorified Matangi Devi by chanting her 16 names, which were again revealed by Hayagriva. And of course, like I said earlier, some believe that you must have initiation of a guru, but for the sake of the story, I will mention them here. So the sacred 16 names of Matangi or Shyamala are Sangita-yoginī, Shyamala, Mantranayika, Mantrini, Sachiveshi, Pradhaneshi, Shukhapriya, Vinavati, Vainiki, Mudrini, Priyaka Priya, Nipapriya, Kadambeshi, Kadamba Vanavasini, and Sadamata. If any person glorifies her even by chanting one of these names, the entirety of the three worlds will be in their control, right? It is believed, right? When you chant these 60 names, or at least one of them. Matangi is described to have many dark complexioned Shaktis, or goddesses, playing music, flutes, and Venas behind her, dancing, singing, and walking elegantly and gracefully with swans, mongooses, and peacocks. Wherever she casts her glance, the entirety of the army of enemies will readily and undoubtedly fall down. Matangi, when she steps into the battlefield, she is given a bow called the Chitra Jiva, which would defeat all of the demons, and she happily accepted it, along with a quiver of arrows granted to her by none other than Dhanurveda, which is the Vedas or the science of archery. But in this case, the Vedas or the science of archery takes the form of a gun, and he gives her this bow, this powerful bow and arrows. And Matangi, because she has a veena as her instrument, whenever she sounds the string of her bow, the sound roars and sounds throughout the entire universe, making the demons tremble in fear. That's how powerful she is. And for those of you that do not know, one of the three main goddesses, so the three main goddesses in Hinduism are Saraswati, Lakshmi, and Parvati. So Saraswati, right, is described to be white, pure, has a swan, and has a veena, and she is known to be the goddess of music, arts, speech, and knowledge. And it is said that Matangi is the Tantric form of goddess Saraswati. So Matangi is basically dark complexioned, but holds the same veena instrument, has a green parrot, and has the power to basically defeat an entire army of demons with just her glance. So that's just how powerful the goddesses of Lalita Tripura Sundari are. Alright, so after Matangi and Varahi make their debut, and now we have Lalita Tripura Sundari herself making her debut, her appearance in the battlefield. So Lalita Tripura Sundari moves ahead with the intention of marching forward and waging war against the asuras, the demons. And she is assisted by Rajanayika, right? This is another goddess. The gold in her hand, right, was blazing. She's basically being described in this next chapter, right? So her gold is like blazing, and she has a noose which appears like a serpent. Her bangles make a tinkling sound as she is holding the sugarcane bowl, and she has a set of 5 flowery arrows shining brightly. She has a radiance that is cascading from her form in all of the directions. It was a more dazzling red than 1,000 suns. Her face radiated in all of the directions, and from that light or glow of her face, she made the sky appear as though it was filled with moons. And she has this radiant white umbrella above her, which basically resembles the shape of the moon, and this umbrella was so humongous and giant that it pervaded the three worlds and was studded with white pearls, right? So this description, I'm going to continue describing her, but these descriptions are sort of describing how powerful and how important Lalita Tripura Sundari is. They're describing her as the ultimate Brahman, the supreme power, Parashakti. And in this chapter, they also describe her as Parameshwari. Parameshwari means the ultimate supreme queen or the ultimate supreme goddess. So that's why they describe her in such a way. Anyway, continuing forward with the description of Lalita Tripura Sundari's debut, right? So Lalita Tripura Sundari is being fanned by groups of female attendants, one of who is Vijaya. Vijaya means victory. Lalita Tripura Sundari has this pure refulgence, meaning this huge, pure light, pure glow, whatever you want to call it. And she basically is saying, I am the supreme Shakti. She's indicating by her presence, by her appearance, I am the supreme Shakti, the supreme Brahman, the supreme power, right? And so all of her army is embellished by the insignia, which is the symbol of the army, right? Many celestial deities or devas, the celestial gods are basically praising her wealth and her grandeur, and basically music is resounding throughout the entire universe by just her presence alone. She's basically described as the honor and pride of the imperial wealth, which fills up the voids or the emptiness of the three worlds with her Shakti army. With her appearance, right, she is luminous and she is glowing. Everything about her is glowing, and the gods are singing her praise, her appearance, her form, right? They are elated. They are happy that they get to see this appearance, this form of hers, and that she is getting ready for battle. I'll continue on though because this chapter is pretty cool. So anyway, it is later described that auspicious showers of fried grains scattered by groups of celestial damsels have a refulgence like the streak of lightning, indicating their hope and wish for her victory. She was being ever served at her feet by Kameshwari and others of lovely and desirable luster. Luster means glow, light, right? So just think of that. Who are very charming in their martial dress, who were eternal and who obscured the sun. Basically means surpassed or is more glowing, more radiant than the sun. That's the word I was looking for, radiant. By means of their glistening weapons, right? So everything is glowing, everything is radiant in this chapter, but I still want to read it. I don't know why I'm being pulled to read it. I didn't want to paraphrase this chapter for whatever reason, even though I've paraphrased the previous ones. I don't know why. I'm going to keep reading. In the course of her martial activity, right? So she's basically preparing for battle, right? Doing her martial battle stuff. Lalita Tripura Sundari drove her chariot, which was called the Sri Chakra. Lalita Tripura Sundari moved with an intention for waging war as she was glorified by the gods through 25 epithets of great value like precious stones. Okay, so they're basically repeating her 25 names. Hayagriva, and Hayagriva is telling this story to Sage Agastya, right? So Sage Agastya interrupts and says, Hayagriva, can you please, bless me with hearing the sacred 25 names of Lalita Parameshwari? So Hayagriva then says, the 25 names of Lalita Tripura Sundari are Simhasana, Shri Lalita, Maharagni, Parankusha, Kapini, Tripura, Mahatripura Sundari, Sundari, Chakranata, Samragni, Chakrini, Chakreshwari, Mahadevi, Kameshi, Parameshwari, Kamaraja Priya, Kamakotiga, Chakravartini, Mahavidya, Shivananga, Vallava, Sarvapatala, Kulanata, Nayan Nata, Sarvam Nayani Vasini, Shingara Naika. Those were kind of hard to pronounce, so I apologize. But anyway, it is said that those who glorify Lalita Parameshwari, through these 25 names, they will attain good fortune, the 8 Shaktis or 8 spiritual powers, and great reputation. And thus, Lalita, the Divine Mother, who was furious and angry with Bhandasura, moves ahead, deploying the army and marching forward, right, in battle. So I wanted to clarify before we start this auspicious part of the story of Goddess Lalita Tripura Sundari. So, if anybody is confused, there is the Goddess Lalita Tripura Sundari, right? And she's preparing for battle. Then there's the Goddess Varahi, the boar-headed goddess. And she is the commander-in-chief. She is the commander of Lalita's army. And she's resounding the drums and basically announcing Lalita's arrival in the battlefield. Then there is the goddess Matangi, or Mantrini as she's called in some of the scriptures. She's the tantric form of Saraswati Devi, and she's also known to be the goddess of speech, of music, of art. Matangi is the minister of the army of goddesses of the Shaktisena. Lalita is in the chariot, in the divine chariot called the Chakraraja, or the Raja Chakra, right? Raja means a king or queen, so naturally that would belong to Lalita Tripura Sundari. Then Varahi enters the battlefield, and she is in the Giri Chakra. But, of course, Matangi is the minister, so she goes second, and she goes in the Giti Chakra or the Gaya Chakra. Same chariot, but different names. And of course, Varahi's chariot is called the Giri Chakra, right? So first, I believe it's Varahi who enters the battlefield, then it is Matangi who enters the battlefield, then Lalita Parameshwari or Lalita Tripura Sundari. And each of those chariots of the divine trinity of the goddesses that are entering the battlefield have thousands, if not millions, of Shaktis or goddess soldiers or goddesses that are ready for battlefield, and also gods and damsels and servants and attendants who are ready to fight the battle with them within each of those chariots. And each of those chariots that each of these goddesses has levels to it. And the higher the level, the higher the importance. And the lower levels tend to be deities who have either powers to protect the chariot or who are ready for battle, depending on the nature of the goddess. I didn't want to paraphrase this next part of the story for some reason. I haven't had to do that for the previous chapters, but for some reason, these next chapters, I'm being called to just read them as I'm reading them here on the English translated version, right? So this next chapter is describing the chariot of Sri Lalita, right? And Sage Agastya is basically asking Hayagriva, can you please mention the names of the deities who were in the leading chariot of the Chakraraja, right? Which is the Sri Chakra, which is the chariot of Lalita Tripura Sundari, right? So he is basically asking Hayagriva to describe them to the fullest detail, right? And so Hayagriva narrates the story, and he says, it is mentioned that 10 Siddhidevis were stationed on the 9th step of the brilliant chariot. Listen to their names from me. They were Anima, Mahima, Lagima, Garira, Isita, or Ishita, Vashitaj, Praptisiddhi is the 7th one, Prakamya Siddhi, Mukti Siddhi, and the one named Sarvakama. These deities have form arms. They resemble China rose or japa flowers, and they held in their hands the Chintamani, which was basically a ruby or like a very powerful stone. These goddesses are holding this stone a skull, tridents. Basically, they were described to be full of kindness. In the former half of the chariot are the 8 Shaktis, beginning with Brahmi, Maheshwari, Kaumari, Vaishnavi, Varahi, Mahendri. Chamunda is the 7th one, and the 8th one is Mahalakshmi. And these goddesses possess 2 arms. Their person is red in complexion, and they're wearing red garments, and they hold a skull and a lotus in their hands. Right? So, for those of you that want to know, right? So, Brahmi is the Shakti of the creation god, Lord Brahma. Maheshwari is the Shakti of Mahesha or Mahesh, who is known as Lord Shiva. And Vaishnavi is the Shakti of Vishnu. And Mudradevis are stationed in the place above theirs in the chariot, and with their hands they have a radiance of lotuses, and they were engaged in expressing mudras, which are the gestures. So I don't know if you guys have seen in Hinduism, they hold this mudra, right, with gestures with the hands, which signifies certain spiritual things, spiritual powers. Like, for example, in this picture you guys are seeing of the Buddha, you guys will see that one of his hands has this palm gesture, right? That palm gesture, which you will see in Hinduism, Buddhism, is basically the boon bestowing gesture, or the gesture to bestow powers. So these Mudra Devis, which are the goddesses of mudras, or the hand gestures, resemble the flowers of pomegranate. They are charming in their yellow garments. They have 4 arms, and in 2 of them, they are holding shields and swords. They have red eyes, and these are their following names. They were Sarvasam Kshobini, Sarva Vitravini, Sarva Karshana Krinmutra, Sarva Vashankari, Sarvon Madana Mudra, Sarva Mahan Kushayasti, Sarva Kecharika Mutra, Sarva Vija, Sarva Yoni is the 9th one, and Sarva Trikhandika. I probably butchered those names, and I apologize. And they were posted in the red chariot in order to slay the demon Bhandasura. So there's other goddesses or deities who are basically in the red chariot, who are basically destined to slay the demon Bhandasura. And Hayagriva basically describes them as Shaktis in the form of 16, right? And these are their following names, which are Kamakarshanika, Putya, Karshanika, Kala, Ahamkara Karshini, Shabda Karshanika Kala, Sparsha Karshanika Nitya, Rupa Karshanika Kala, Rasaka Rasakarshanika Nitya, Gandha Karshanika Kala, the eternal, Chitta Karshanika, Dhairya Karshanika Kala, Smritya Karshanika Nitya, Nama Karshanika Kala, Bija Karshanika Nitya, Atma Karshanika Kala, Amrita Karshani Nitya, and Sharira Karshini Kala. And they were in the 8th, I guess, level or step, and they were glorified by their secret names. They are described to resemble coral trees, and they were charming with their smiles. They're described to have 4 arms and 3 eyes. Their crowns shone brightly like the moon and sun. They were holding bows, arrows, shields, and swords. And they were completely ready to slay this demon called Bhandasura. In the step below them, if I'm not mistaken, there were these deities named Guptataras, which again were stationed below them on the 7th step of the chariot and had the brightness of a lamp in the evening. Their names were Ananga Madana, Ananga Madanatura, Anangaleka, Anangavega, Anangankusha, and Ananga Malangi. I hope I'm pronouncing those right. So they are described to have the glow of a China rose, or again, a japa flower. They are holding a sugarcane bow, flowery arrows, bouquets of flowers, and lotuses. They were valorous and courageous, and they obeyed the commands of Lalita Tripura Sundari, and they are glowing with anger at Bhandasura. There's other deities named Sampradayas, also known as the traditional deities, the chief among whom was Sarvasamkshovini, who resorted to the sixth step of the leading chariot Chakraraja. So I'm guessing they're starting from the highest step of the chariot Chakraraja, and each of them has like levels. And as we're reading this chapter, the levels and the steps get lower. But anyway, in the sixth level of the chariot, the deities, sampradayas, are described to have hairs that are tied into ornamental braids. They have a saffron mark or bindis on their foreheads, which shone brightly. They are excessively impetuous by nature. They're basically saying they are excessively impulsive and deities who act quickly by nature. They have bows and arrows of fire, and they are holding swords in the form of fire and shields made of fire. Their bodies are illuminating, and their fury is towards the leader of the asuras. And they basically are deities that have risen from the ashes of Kamadeva. And their names are Sarva Samkshovini, Sarva Vitravini, Sarva Karshanika Shakti, Sarva Ladanika, Sarva Sammohini Shakti, Sarva Stambana Shaktika, Sarva Tribana Shakti. I'm pretty sure I butchered that one. Sarvon Madana Shaktika, Sarvartha Sadika Shakti, Sarva Sampati Purani, Sarva Mantramayi Shakti, Sarvatvantaksha Yankari, and thus the names of the Sampradaya deities have been mentioned. Pretty sure I butchered all of them, and I apologize. We're now heading below to the fifth level of the chariot, who are known to be Lotirnas. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. They are described to be illuminated like crystal, brilliant bodies. They are holding axes, nooses, maces, bells, and jewels, and they have knitted brows that are excessively furious towards the enemy of the gods. And these are their names: Sarva Siddhi Prada Devi, Sarva Sampat Prada, Sarva Priyankari, Sarva Mangalakarini, Sarva Kama Prada Devi, Sarva Dukha Vimochini, Sarva Mitru Pramashini, Sarva Vignani Varini, Sarvanga Sundari Devi, and Sarva Saubhagya Dayini. In the fourth level, we have goddesses known as the Nigarbha-yoginīs. They are glorified as having the radiance equal to that of a pearl necklace, and their names are Sarvagnya, Sarva Shakti, Sarva Ishvara, Sarva Ishvarya Prada, Sarvagnya Namayi Devi, Sarva Vyati Vinashini, Sarva Daraswarupa, Sarva Papahara, Sarva Sarvananda Mayi Devi, Sarvaksha Sarupini, and Sarvepsida Falaprada. Pretty sure I'm butchering all of these names, but I have to say them because apparently saying their names, or even with the intention of glorifying the names of these Shaktis, is known to bless the people listening or the people chanting. And I want to do it out of respect, even if the pronunciations aren't correct. But if I mess up on the pronunciations of any of these names throughout the story, please correct me in the comment section. Thank you. Anyways, so the deities or the goddesses in the fourth level of the Shri Chakra, on the third level of the chariot, are the deities named Rahasya-yoginīs, and they are the deities of speech. and they are described to have a radiance like that of the red Ashoka. They hold bows and arrows in their hands. Armors are covering their whole bodies. They shone like lutes and books. Their names are Vashini, Kamishi, Vogini, Vimala, Aruna, Javini, Sarveshi, and Gaulini. And these deities are remembered as the cause of the slaughter of the demons. Right? And in the second level, or the second step of the Chakraraja, or the chariot, uh, these deities were three, and they are seated on three different seats. They have 8 arms, which hold bows, arrows, a drinking bowl, a citrus fruit, a dagger, shields, a noose, and a bell of loud sound. And they are intoxicated due to liquor, and they keep secrets guardedly. And their names are Kameshi, Vajreshi, and Bagamalini. And these 3 deities are remembered as ones filled with anger towards Bhandasura. Then, all around the great seat of bliss, which I'm assuming is the seat where Lalita Tripura Sundari is, in the middle of the chariot, there are 15 deities around the middle of the chariot. So they are eternal as the form of time, or kala, and they station themselves after pervading the entire universe. Their bows indicate their fury against Bhandasura and the other demons. They have their forms and persons on par with those of the goddess Tripura Sundari, their weapons too, like the goddess. And it is for rendering help to all the worlds that they exist in every yuga, or every time, or every era. And their names are Kameshi, Bagamalha, Nityaklina, Berunda, Vanivasini, Mahavajreshwari, Druti, Lalita Devi, Kula Sundari, Nitya, Nilapataka, Vijaya, Sarvamangala, Jwala Malinika, and Chitra. Okay, so those names of the goddesses we just talked about were in the Chakraraja, which is the main chariot where Lalita Tripura Sundari is. And these next names, which you are about to hear, are the deities or the goddesses mentioned in the second chariot, called the Kiti Chakra or Gaya Chakra, which is known to be the chariot of Mantrininata, chariot of Mantrini, also known as Matangi, the goddess Matangi. First level of the second chariot, the Gaya Chakra or the Gitti Chakra, is basically the residence of Mantrini. And she's basically the overseer of Lalita's army, right? She's basically the admin. She's in the middle of this second chariot, basically describing her authority. Or the second step of this chariot were the goddesses Rati, Priti, and Manoja, with lutes and bows in their hands, and their dark complexion like a tree with very dark leaves, also known as the Tamala. The goddesses with the arrows of the god of love, also known as Kamadeva, were in the third level of this chariot, and their names are Dravini, Shoshini, Bandini, Mohini, and Unmadini. And these 5 have resplendent bows in their hands, and they have 5 gods beneath these goddesses, who are known to be Kamaraja, Gandharpa, Manmata, Makaradvaja, and Manobhava. And all of these deities were capable of enchanting the 3 worlds. So remember that in the former half of the main chariot were the 8 Shaktis, beginning with Brahmi, Maheshwari, Vaishnavi, Varahi, right? All of those deities. So those same deities, those 8 Shaktis, are also in the second chariot of Sri Matangi, or in the 4th level of the Gaya Chakra as well. But beneath them in that very same level were the goddesses Lakshmi, Saraswati, Rati, Priti, Kirti, Shanti, Pushti, and Tushti. They are described to have red eyes due to anger, and they're holding spears, and Kuntas, also known as lances and discuses, in order to kill great, powerful demons. 16 other deities, which are located in the fifth level of the Giti Chakra, and their names are Vama, Jyeshta, Raudri, Shanti, Shraddha, Saraswati, Shri Shakti, Lakshmi, Shrishti, Mohini, Pramatini, Ashaswini, Vichi, Vidyunmalini, Surananda, and Nagabhutika. On the seventh level of this Giti Chakra were the deities Matangi, Siddha Lakshmi, Mahamatangika, Mahati, Sita Lakshmi, and they were all with the complexion of red skin, and they were holding bows and arrows. And beneath that same level were stationed Ganapati, Kshetrapa, Gurdamba, Batuka, with weapons in their hands. And also beneath them, within that very same level, were Lakshmi, Saraswati, and the treasures Shanka and Padma, who all held weapons in their hands, and they were basically furious towards Banda. In that same level as well, we have 10 leaders of the quarters, beginning with Chakra and ending with Vishnu, who were stationed in the same level in the forms of Shaktis or goddesses. And they were holding thunderbolts, spears, the Kaladanda, also known as the staff of the god of time, Kala, a sword, a noose, a flag, a mace, a trident, and the Darba grass, as well as the discus. And they served Mantrinata in order to destroy the Asura followers, the wicked unbelievers of Banda. Protectors of the points, right? These protectors basically went to the Giti Chakra, the second chariot, because they were eager to remind and inform Lalita Tripura Sundari of the task to destroy Bhandasura through the support of Mantrinata, which is the goddess Matangi. But all of the petitions of all the devas or any celestial god had to go through the goddess Matrini to Lalita Tripura Sundari. So the goddess Mantrini would basically be the one to deliver the messages straight to Lalita Tripura Sundari, because Mantrini or Matangi was the beloved of Shri Lalita Tripura Sundari, but also she was the royal administrator, basically like a royal messenger or a grand visor or a prime minister, if you will, right? So she has that importance. And because goddess Matangi was the goddess of music and speech, she was given the task to basically send messages to Sri Lalita Tripura Sundari if somebody had something to say or somebody wanted to ask her something. Wanting victory and making sure that Sri Lalita had their messages delivered, they served goddess Matangi. And anyway, all of the deities of the Chakraraja and the Gita Chakra are now finally said, and it is said that those who listen to all of the names of these deities shall be liberated from all sins, and they shall emerge victorious. So I believe that's one of the reasons why Lalita, when I was reading this chapter, wanted me to say it word for word. Makes a lot of sense why I couldn't even paraphrase any of these chapters. But we're not done, because there's another chariot of Lalita Tripura Sundari. This is the third chariot, called the Giri Chakraraja, also known as the boar-wheeled chariot. And I'm guessing this is the chariot of goddess Varahi. We have 5 levels in this chariot called the Giri Chakra. And Hayagriva says those who listen to the deities will be granted victory. So Dandanaika, who is goddess Varahi, is the leader of the army and was stationed in the first level of this chariot named Bindu. And she, the destroyer of the Hakid and wicked thorns of the worlds, appears to make the glory of victory dance by different kinds of flames. And Varahi had torn and pierced through the haughty Danavas, or devils or demons with the terrific blow of her snout, of her nose, basically. So she's basically described as the mother of the three worlds, but also the destroyer of evil. The second level of this beautiful chariot of Varahi are three goddesses named Drumbini. I'm pretty sure I butchered that. I apologize. Mohihi and Stambini are in the second level of that same centered, and it looks or resembles a full-blown pomegranate flower. And these deities, these goddesses, were enough to suppress all of the demon army, and they held the pestle, the plow, and the liquor pot, studded with many precious jewels and gems, and they had bangles with rubies that dazzled brilliantly. So on the third level of the Kiri Chakra, the Andini goddesses, which we talked about in the first chariot, had fixed their base in the Devi Yantra. And they are described to have an appearance to split the worlds, the three worlds, by means of their loud laughter. So basically, these are the goddesses that I've described earlier to have a very boisterous or loud laughter, right? They appeared like the flames of fire, which burns the universe at the end of the world. In the fourth level of the Kiri Chakra, of the chakra of Varahi, 6 goddesses are in this level, and they are called Brahmi, and the other, they are the same goddesses from Brahmi to Mahalakshmi, that were mentioned in the previous chakras. In that very same step, there are 7 goddesses called the Datunatas, which were stationed in their respective places, named Yakshini, Shankini, Lakini, Hakini, Shakini, Dakini, and another Hakini. So they are described to have mighty arms, and they are ready to destroy and drink all living beings in the earth. But of course, they are on the side of righteousness. They are basically saying that they have this appearance to want to drink the enemies. Kind of like when people say, I am drinking the blood of my enemies. Think of it that way. And they were experts in deluding, slaying, paralyzing, striking, and basically destroying the wicked demons, and basically were able to destroy and eliminate all enemies. And they had cart-shaped teeth, terrible eyes, and they were ready to swallow anybody who acted wickedly against their goddesses, whether human or demons. And on the other side of this very same level, there's a temple, a divine temple, where there are goddesses named Krodini and Stambini. And there was a lion, an exceedingly terrible lion, known as the Gando Chanda, at the same step in front of Varahi. So this is basically Varahi's vehicle, this lion named Gando Chanda. And with his roar, the entire sky echoed, and everywhere was deafened by its sounds when it gnashed its teeth. In the 6th level of the Kiri Chakra, this chariot of the goddess Varahi, are 8 goddesses, beginning with Vardali, and their voices were loud as the sound basically that resounded throughout the entire universe. 8 mountains clashed with one another, and 8 serpents served the purpose of being their ornaments. They sacrificed thousands of demons in fire of their mighty arms, and they served goddess Varahi day and night. And their names are Vartali, Varahi, Varahamukhi, Andini, Rodini, Germhini, Mohini, and Stambini. So in that level, right, not only is the terrifying lion, which is the vehicle of Varahi, but there's another vehicle who is a buffalo, and 8 goddesses with 8 serpents in that very same level, and was even laughing at the vehicle or the buffalo of the god of death, right? So that's how superior it was in terms of its form. On the very same level of this third chariot are the gods, the celestial gods we've been talking about. And there are the 8 guardian deities, which included Lord Indra. They had the task of informing Lalita Tripura Sundari of her duties and of her tasks. The names are Indra, the 64,000 celestial damsels, the Siddhas, the Agni, the fire god, Satyas, Vishve, Devas, Vishvakarma, the divine architect, Maya, mothers of strength, Rudras, the attendants and dreadful Pishakas, Mitras, Gandharvas, who were experts in singing, Bhutangas, or groups of goblins, Varuna, Vasus, Vidyadharas, Kinaras, Maruteshvara, also known as the god of wind, Chitraraja, Chitrarata, chariot makers, artisans, Tumburu, Narada, Yaksha, Soma, Yakshesvara, also known as Kubera, Lord Govinda, Lord Krishna, along with other celestial gods. Ishana, I believe, is Lord Shiva, Brahma, Ashwini Putras, Lord Tanvantari, who is another form of Lord Vishnu, the Lord of Medicine, and the leaders of Ganas, also known as the Gananyakas, um, were there. Ananta, Vasuki, Taksha, Karkota Padma, Mahapadma, Shankapala, Gulika, and Subala. These were serpents surrounded by thousands of other serpents there. And many deities were in this chariot, stationed and ready for their active duties. And then, as well, in that very same wheel, are 3 other deities named Drumbini, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Stambini, and Mohini. Right? So each of these deities are in the same wheel, but in different directions. And in that same level of the Giri Chakra, or the chariot of Varahi Devi, there is a deity named Kshetrapala. I don't know if any of you guys have seen the film Kantara. Um, there is a god named Kulika who is the protector guardian of the land, and Kshetrapala is a deity in that form, right? He's in the form of a protector guardian, and he's serving the goddesses. And he's described to have a skull, holding a skull and a mace, and he has dark complexion, and he basically has um, many features of Patalalok, which is, I believe, the underworld. Some people even consider Kshetrapala to be a form of Lord Shiva, a fiercer form of Lord Shiva. And he, in this story, is described to have a very loud laughter that is the equivalent of a thunderbolt. And the ocean of liquor is now taking a form of a deity, and they are the one leading the chariot of Varahi, the Giri Chakra. The reason why the ocean of liquor, also known as Surasindu, would become a deity was when the goddesses began to sweat and feel thirsty for the blood of the demons. The ocean of liquor would spread in order to satisfy the thirst of the goddesses. There are Bairavas, which we have talked before, which is the fierce form of Rudra, aka Lord Shiva, which are found there. And whenever Varahi wishes or commands, they will destroy the entire universe after the end of a kalpa, or a certain, I believe, time cycle is the word. And there are 10 forms of Bhairava, which are in that same chariot, which are Hetuka, Tripurari, Agni Bhairava, Yamajiva, Ekapada, Kala, Karalaka, Bhimarupa, Hatakesha, and Achala, I believe is the pronunciation. So anyway, they're there. And whenever the demons will be killed by the goddesses, the Bhairavas will be the ones to drink the blood of the enemies, essentially. So anyway, in the midst of millions and thousands of many armies of the goddess Shakti, three of these chariots, the three chariots, the Chakraraja, which is the main chariot, the Keya Chakra, which is the second one, and this one, which is the uh, and the Kiri Chakra, are moving ahead. And as they move as one, there is a loud sound that resounds throughout the entire earth and the entire universe, just by them moving in sync, headed towards the demons and into the battlefield. All right, so now we're going to talk about the charioteers, right? The ones leading the chariots. So the six charioteers leading the chariot of Lalita, also known as the Chakraraja, are known to be Ira Devi, Tripura Bhairavi, Samhara Bhairava, and Rakta-yogini Vallabha, and Sarasa and Chamunda. The charioteer of the Gaya Chakra was Hasantika or Hashantika, and then Stambini is the charioteer of the Giri Chakra. And it is said that the imperial deity Lalita, the great goddess of all Shaktis, the sovereign deity who had ascended the rulership of a great empire, advanced against the demon Bhandasura with a desire to accomplish his death. At that time, the cardinal points reverberated with the sounds, the earth shook, and all the living beings became excited and agitated at the departure of Lalitesha, aka Goddess Lalita. And the divine drums sounded, and showers of flowers fell on everyone. The celestial musicians, the Gandharvas, beginning with Vishvavasu, Dumburu, Narada, and Sarasvati, the goddess of speech, music, and art herself, began to recite auspicious verses of victory along with excellent songs. Their faces beamed with delight, hairs standing on their ends over their bodies served as ornaments. They repeatedly glorified Goddess Lalita, adding, "Be victorious, be victorious." Delighted, they began to dance at every step. The seven sages, beginning with Vashishta, repeated hymns and verses from the Vedas, increasing their good wishes for her glory and victory in the same manner as the sacrificial fires of great purity. Being glorified by all of her Shaktis and everyone involved, and shining in her chariot, Goddess Lalita set off along with the soldiers, or her Shaktisena, or her army, to conquer the demon Bhandasura.